Okay, so we're on air. Hey, welcome everyone. This is our first formal hangout for the AI Code Newbie channel, and we've got Russell here. Do you mind introducing yourself, Russell?
Sure. My name is Russell, and I am an industry veteran, but an AI newbie. But it's something that's interesting to me, so I'm trying to learn more.
Cool. I'm Mohammed, also known as Mo Abdul, and yeah, I'd consider myself to be a veteran as well. I've been coding for 10 plus years. Still also trying to learn on AI and get deep into that. So basically, we this is our first hangout, so we're not really experienced on how to go through this, but I've prepared a simple outline on how to drive our discussion. First of all is the introduction, which we've just gone through, and then just to popularize AI and to make it more of a common theme to the general public, especially to the newbie coder. So, Russell, how would you describe AI in layman's word?
In layman's terms, I would say what AI means is basically when a computer is able to act in ways that have not specifically been pre-programmed to do. Or at least it's able to make decisions in a way that is not as straightforward as following conditionals.
Yes, in a more not to be hard coded in a way, more of a free. Yes, absolutely. To me as well, if I would put it in a simple sentence, I would say that if a computer can non-deterministically express itself in any way that's considered by us humans smart, then that's one form of AI.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a range, obviously. For example, commonly things with games, something like min-max algorithm it falls in the realm of AI, but it's not learning, and it is deterministic. I mean,
yeah,
for the most part, but I think the reason it falls into the category is because it's partly, in that case, it's doing a job that we normally would consider very human, which is playing a game.
Yes, true. So it's it's a debate. People consider it smart, others consider it not so smart. But the official term would be it's a bulldozer kind of intelligence, where
it's brute force.
If we had the same capacity, memory capacity as humans, if we had that, then we could definitely do the same thing. But since we cannot look beyond 2 or 3 levels deep in a chess game, for example, then we definitely cannot do that.
Although something more sophisticated would typically have something that's a little more of a combination, maybe, of that and some other things. But
yeah, true. Which brings me, like, historically, the first approach to this, the Deep Blue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure you know about that. The computer that bet Kasparov in chess in 1997, I think 1996, 1997. And exactly what you said, it had a combination of things. It wasn't only min-max, but it was doing some other applying some other techniques as well to achieve this kind of on the software and on the hardware level, definitely.
Yeah.
So one of the most because I think people are threatened when AI is mentioned in any subject, especially those who are new to the programming domain, and I think it puts a lot of our especially our community, the code newbie community, it puts them off because they think, oh, I just have time to learn Ruby, or I want to learn Rails, and this can derail me in a way, and it sounds sophisticated, but it's actually, in my personal experience, I think it's very logical if you go through the basic concepts of AI, and it's very easy to implement simple AI, even if you are totally a code newbie.
Yeah, I actually think that even if you were never going to like go into AI as a main area of interest, I actually think that AI is. I actually think it's a really great way of learning more computer science. So a lot of people who would consider them code newbies, and especially people in the code newbie community specifically, a lot of them are coming from boot camps or whatever, and there's the whole software versus developer versus software engineer versus computer scientist, and is a computer science degree worth, and there's all those things, and I think there's many people, and who rightly so, would say that a lot of the computer science stuff is not really necessary in the industry, and it really depends what you do. I mean, if you're making websites, you probably don't need to learn that much about B trees or something.
Yeah.
But if you are interested in digging in a little deeper and understanding, the value of understanding data structures and algorithms and some of that stuff, AI can be both practical, fun, and also fun, and actually pretty easy to get into, depending on what you get into. I mean, again, I haven't gotten super deep into it, but the min-max algorithm, like implementing min-max for tic-tac-toe, let's say, is not, varsity level AI, but you learn about certain things. And even just, I think that like just understanding the way the min-max algorithm works, it can be really eye-opening if you haven't done anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And which brings me to the point that actually AI is more of a cross domain between many subjects. So you've got computer science, you've got you've got programming, you've got algorithms, you've got data structures, you've got software engineering, you've got, so you got even some of the higher level purer kinds of sciences like philosophy, even theology is considered to be
I mean, yeah, certainly it can be, and I mean, it's definitely, I think that's part of what makes it like fun, a little sexy,
Yeah.
to get into, which is why it's a thing. I think that's kind of what I was saying about how if you haven't really approached the computer science spectrum, anytime you're learning anything, having motivation for doing it is really important. And I think AI is an area that it's cool. Saying you did it or something about it is cool. Even just just what it is really interesting. And so if you wanted a good project to take you to the next step of computer science and learn more about data structures and algorithms, I would definitely point someone in that direction.
Yeah, definitely. To me, I love it because it makes me kind of think about. I consider myself to be a scientist, not more of an engineer.
Yeah.
Because I like to go deeper into the libraries and see how they actually work. I don't. For engineers, it's a matter of if you can do loops and conditionals, then you can perfectly be an engineer for the rest of your life. There is no issue with that.
I that is probably a topic for another time, because I would probably
yeah. Yes.
But
I like to dig deeper, and CS, or I mean AI definitely is more about not only the conditionals of stuff, but how they work, what's the best way they perform.
I mean, I think that still falls into the category of engineering. Engineering is more about the implementation of it, right? It's like the difference between like theoretical and applied physics. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So engineering is about taking things that you understand and then implementing them well.
Yes, yes.
Whereas if you want to call yourself a scientist, I mean, really, you should be exploring new things we don't understand yet.
Exactly. And I, if I can put it in a more simpler term, so science is more about discovery of researching and applying things for the first time, and engineering is more about perfecting what scientists have already implemented. So that's where and that's why science interests me, because I want to be on that edge where I'm discovering, rather than to be on the other extreme where I'm perfecting.
Sure. It's interesting because I think that I can understand that, but I also I don't want to make it sound like engineering does not involve innovation, though. It just may not be discovering a new thing so much as it's implementing it potentially in a better way than it's happened before. And it's not as though everything's a solved problem. There's still, there's obviously a lot of challenge, and there's plenty of room for innovation, but maybe not discovery. I agree. I think that the word discovery should probably be left to science.
Yes, and it's there's a thin line actually between both, and I believe that every one of us is part and part. So you are part scientist and part engineer, but which part overwhelms the other is also part of every programmer's character. And there, exactly, absolutely, as you said, we can't define engineering as not being innovative, because if we did so, then we wouldn't invent anything in the first place. Because what I mean by that, for example, for Edison to build the phone, that means that the guy who discovered electricity, then that invention of the phone should be attributed to the guy who discovered electricity,
right, exactly,
rather than to Edison who built the phone.
Right.
So absolutely, engineering is innovative as well, and it's a mixture between both.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. That's really cool. But main point I want to say to the code newbie and anybody who's actually put off by the term AI or the domain AI, it's not magic. It's not rocket science. It's really, once you start reading about it and seeing how actually some of the algorithms are really trivial, it's not that hard to implement.
I mean, I know I've said it a bunch of times, but I mean, the min-max algorithm, for example, it really is not a hard thing to do.
Yeah. And I've just done that a couple of weeks ago, so please keep saying that, Russell, because I had pride implementing the min-max.
Well, there are complicated parts. The base algorithm itself is not that hard to implement.
Yeah.
What can be hard is the evaluation function piece and getting that right. And there are certain aspects that around the edges, certainly.
Yeah.
And part of it is really breaking down the problem in a way that can be put into min-max well.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, seeing a problem, as you've said, seeing a problem and then identifying that, hey, this is something that can fit a min-max, or this is something that can fit a black-red tree, or whatever, then this is also part of AI. You don't have to be like, oh, I have to research and discover things all the time. No, you have to actually identify what type of problem that this algorithm or this AI technique solves. So this is also an important part of AI.
Sure. Yeah.
And so going on to our next step, I think we've already passed that, but we want to answer the question of why we are here as the AI Code Newbie Slack channel and the Biweekly hangout. So again, this effort is this AI channel, and the effort behind it came from myself and from Russell and from other people who are part of the channel, KO being one of them, and several other people. So, and we have this common interest, again, AI and machine learning and smart stuff, basically, software smart stuff. And we decided to have this haven where we can chat on the Code Newbie channel, and we want to popularize AI to the rest of the Code Newbie community. So we thought of doing this as well, and to have a stable place where anybody can reach out to us, or we can reach out to each other, and to communicate verbally with each other every 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
So yeah, now to the cool stuff.
Okay.
Now I know this is our first hangout, but then we did have some informal hangouts before, and we did decide collectively on the channel to start with a cool project, a classical AI mini project, if I can say, and that is to build a chatbot.
Mm-hmm.
And I've built my simple chatbot, and Russell also as well. And
Yep.
I actually, after you building yours, Russell, I don't want to even showcase mine anymore. So if you can go through what did you build and what technologies you chose to build it, some of the theory, some of the practice behind it, and then if you can and you have time, if you can, like, show us what it does.
Sure. I mean, I guess I can do that. You mean in terms of actually running it?
Yeah, we can either share my screen or yours, and then we can
Yeah, sure.
run it on Slack and see what happens there.
Well, did you so you don't want to talk about yours at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So
why don't you start with yours? Because yours is really a chap. Mine's a I don't even.
So here is, I think, let me speak about mine, and then we'll speak about yours, and then I have to emphasize what's the huge difference between Mobot and C3PO. It's my chatbot Mobot and Russell's C3PO. So mine is pretty traditional, nothing really, no magic at all. It's actually an old approach to building chatbots, which and the same. I use the AI/ML technology, or artificial markup language. Let me include that here later so I can add it to the show notes. So it's I think it's almost about 15 years to 20 years old technology, which still proves to be good up until today. And it's AI/ML, artificial intelligence markup language, and it's similar to HTML. It's an XML kind of language, similar to HTML.
I mean, it's not like HTML in the sense that, but it's an XML.
Yes.
Format.
Yes, it's an XML format, and it's a bunch of files. Basically, they store categories, and categories are just a pattern and a template. A pattern being a question, and a template being an answer to that question. So if I ask my bot, "Hi, how are you?" then it will take that and try to match it with a pattern, and will reply back to me with the template within that category of that pattern. So it's very simple approach. It's just as Russell said before, it's just a fancy XML parser in a way.
Yeah. I think what I said is it's like a fancy switch statement.
Yeah, so exactly, it's a fancy switch statement. So yeah, and the idea behind it is very simple, and thankfully I've used Python to run the chatbot, and it took me exactly, just to initiate everything and to read the AI/ML file, it took me 6 lines of code in Python code. So that is considered nothing in programmers' effort.
Yeah. Right, because it's a whole library intended to not even really require much coding as much as using the markup language, right?
Yes. All I have to do is just plug up everything together, download a set of AIML files, point the parser to these files, and then point the chatbot to Slack, so we can actually conduct the conversation on Slack.
Now, I was actually curious, how much modification did you do? Like, I know you loaded it with a ton of standard files. I wasn't sure how much you tweaked it or.
Yeah, if I can share the screen and I can actually show you. Okay, let's. Yeah. So basically, this is my home server. So let me see here. Can you see my screen, Russell?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so if you see down here, I've got this AIML directory, and it basically includes a standard set of AIML, which I downloaded from the Alice website. So it's just a standard English AIML set, which has standard questions and standard answer. Hi, how are you? Hi back. What, and so on and so forth. So, and it's if you can see, it's actually I mean, it's not that. I think how many? I think it's counting some kind of. So it's around maybe, I don't know, maybe 30 files. And if you can see, it's the bot profile.
Yo mama, that must have been yours.
Huh?
Yo mama.
Oh yeah, that's mine. That's I just you just saw that. My God. What about geography, phone, and politics, psychology, sports, yeah, and so on. So it's just standard files that can make up a quick and easy chatbot personality. And if I may check one of these, for example, if I go through, let's see here, money, for example, and you can see each category is let's say is a question bubble by itself, along with the answer. So if you got a pattern where the user asks you got paid and star will match anything, then the bot will reply actually as, and then it will provide its age, year old, and it provide its gender. I have no need for money. So you can see it's just simple patterns and simple templates that it parses in runtime. Actually, not in runtime. It parses it at compilation time, then stores it into memory, and then retrieves it in runtime and answers the user. So nothing fancy here. Yeah. So now, and yeah, I want to emphasize one thing, that mine, as you can see, is using some static files, AIML files that I have on my local machine. So it has no idea. It's not connected with any external data sources, any external APIs, like what we are going to actually see with C3PO, which is Russell's monster.
It is a monster.
Yeah. Let me. How can I stop the? Maybe if I click it again. Boom. Oh yeah. Okay. So please go on, Russell.
Yeah. So for me, I decided to go with a different technology because I feel like I've written enough XML for 6 lifetimes, and so I was exploring what else was out there, and I found something called RiveScript, which is a more modern library that accomplishes basically the same task, and in a very similar sort of way. So basically, it was. AIML is definitely older, and RiveScript definitely is based on it. But it does not use XML. It uses a more shorthand notation. And so I thought, that's cool. And I knew that it had a good Node library for it. So I thought I'd just get started with that. I thought that from looking over it, one of the things that I wanted to do with mine was to be able to connect with external APIs to do things. And so I thought, and also I knew like Slack had good Node API and all that stuff. So I thought, all right, well, why don't I use RiveScript, and then part of it'll be fun that we're using two different technologies. So I got started with it. But unlike AIML, RiveScript doesn't have nearly the level of like standard files to get started with. It had some, but like not enough to really be that.
Yeah.
And I was really lazy because I really didn't want to write a bunch of those. Because while I think it can be, fun and cool to make a chatbot that way, if you know what you want to do, it seemed like, I don't know, a lot of work. I'm lazy.
So let me because maybe this for someone who does not really understand what you're saying here. You're saying that your laziness actually made you create even a better monster.
Well, and again, better is maybe a stretch. Let me just get it fired up in case you want to see it. Okay. So what I decided to do instead, I thought, well, I kind of want to get this API thing working, as I want to be able to do some cool stuff. And the first thing I had to do was connect to a weather API, actually. And it works, but I never polished it because, again, I'm lazy. So it'll like figure out your weather, and it'll spit it out as JSON text into the Slack chat. It's terrible. But it got it started, and one of the challenges I hit actually was, and this is actually kind of a difference between highlights some differences between the technology choices that you and I both made. One, and this was one of the things I liked about RiveScript. It does I would say a better job of being able to call extra code, just raw code. Like I want to be able to go from RiveScript interpretation of I got this, question or statement or whatever somebody said, something that came in. Now I need to be able to respond to it. Obviously, writing those patterns and then having a template. That's one way of doing it. But if you wanted to fetch the weather, obviously you can't know that without connecting to an API. So you have to call real code.
Yes.
And AIML can do that, but it's a little clunky.
Yes.
Because you have to basically make a call out to run a script, and it'll all go over standard in and out, basically.
Yeah, yes, that's true.
Whereas RiveScript will you just hand it a JavaScript function and it will just call it. And I like that about it. It does have one major flaw, though, and this again is a highlighting a technology choice here. Because I was using Node, any kind of external API is going to be asynchronous. And RiveScript doesn't really handle asynchronous. It lets you call a JavaScript function, but that JavaScript function needs to kind of return immediately for it to make sense with what it's doing. So I forked the RiveScript library and I added promises support, which I won't go into. Really, just anyone who does JavaScript Node programming probably knows what promises are. If they don't, it's a way of handling asynchrony. And I basically added support for that to make that easier. So now, once I had done that, the world was my oyster. Mm-hmm. And I, add in APIs like that. So I added, an API for Twitter and Reddit and Wikipedia and YouTube. And I basically, given more time, I obviously could have added more. But basically, so I kind of went a different approach. So instead of trying to figure out, all the ways people could ask questions or make comments and what are all the ways that you could respond to that, I said, well, why not farm off the internet to
Exactly.
to find a way of responding to this? Which again, I mean, is it AI? No, it's really outsourced.
I would still consider it AI. The main difference, which I want to emphasize, is that my bot, uses a bunch of local files, static files that have been written by someone.
Yeah.
And that's the knowledge base of my bot.
Yeah.
On contrast to C3PO, where actually the knowledge base is then the internet. So it gets updated not by a specific person, by people on Twitter, on YouTube, on whatever. So the kind of the brain is alive somehow.
The brain is alive, and yeah, you could talk to it and it'll pull in new knowledge. And if you ask it something one day and you ask it again another day, it'll actually potentially say something different, depending.
Yes.
So
yeah.
So yeah, I guess I don't know if you want me to show it off. I can explain a little more specifically what I did if you want. I started trying to think. I think I started with Twitter first. After I did the weather API, because I was trying to think about it like, like if people are going to try to talk to it about a variety of categories of things, that's the kind of thing you might ask a chatbot, like, what do you think about blah, 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 or, what's your favorite thing? I could have canned responses for all of those things and every possible thing I could think of, but obviously it's like an infinite number of things.
Yes.
So, so instead what I did was I said, well, hey, people on Twitter have opinions. So why not ask Twitter what Twitter's opinion on a certain topic would be? And I would take, I'd match a pattern, like, what do you think about star? Very similar to AIML. And I'd take whatever that star was and I would send that to Twitter and say, all right, Twitter, what do you have on this thing? And then when I got it back, the search API for Twitter gives you a list. So I'd go through that list and I'd find the one with the most retweets and favorites, and that's basically, I would just spit it back out just like that. Which, when you're talking to C3PO, you can usually tell what API it's using, because if it's using like hashtags and
But that's really smart, because you're pattern matching with Twitter. You're getting a response, and then you are actually ranking the response according to which has the highest retweets and favorites. So I would consider this to be actually, this is smart.
Yeah, and it is a good use. I mean, I found it to be a very helpful use of LiveScript, because it was legitimately useful to have a thing do that pattern matching for me and be able to pull out the piece that I want and be able to handle the phrasing a bunch of different ways to parse those pieces of text and whatever. And so I did actually find that useful. And then the next thing I think I did was Wikipedia, which was more like, if you have, if someone's talking to C3PO and is saying like, what is this or whatever, it's more like trying to find a definition of something. Well, it would take that again, go to Wikipedia, do a search on Wikipedia. And it's funny because each of these APIs that I've implemented, I've had to, it's not like it's not just a handoff. Like, there was a little bit of like, again, this would be the engineering side. It's to a certain extent just like, okay, I got to look at this API, figure out a way of searching. I all had little problems, figuring out. So, Wikipedia is a little funny because you can do the search and it'll kind of find the page. But it's not even necessarily the canonical page on something. Like, sometimes things get redirected, and so I had to figure out how to follow the redirects to the right thing to get the value. That kind of thing was a little bit hard, because like part of it is you could ask Wikipedia for some information, but unless you know it's not as great about search. And if you're just looking for, like, usually they want you to know what the article title is. Like, what is it actually called? What's the title of this Wikipedia entry?
Yeah.
But if you're working off of a search, it doesn't always do that very well. Anyway, so there's challenges with that kind of thing too that I had to deal with. But at that point, it still wasn't really great to talk to, because basically you'd have to frame it in terms of like these two types of questions, or ways of talking to it. So I was like, well, we've got this bot fight coming up, and I don't have anything for like 90% of anything else someone would say. I need something that could work maybe better as a catch-all for finding things. So that's where Reddit came in. So I just thought, when I was thinking about it, I was like, well, what is just a big pool of things where people are talking about stuff? And so it's again not quite as straightforward as I think. I got access to the Reddit API, and I could have just, on first glance you might think, well, again, operate like Twitter. Here, I have some bit of text. Let me go find the most relevant article or whatever. But that's not really the information you want, because what you want is more like the response to that. So with Reddit, the way I do it is I go and I find a post that is most relevant to the text, and I make sure it's one that has comments on it. So again, it's about doing a search, getting a response, going through the response API, and finding one that seems like it might be the best. So on the search, it's sorted by relevance. And so I did a relevance search, and then I would go through that to find one that had comments. And then I would use the API to fetch the comments, and that would be ranked by most upvoted. And then I would grab the most upvoted comment. Yeah. And that is what I would return. So the idea being that if the post is close enough to the text you sent it, then the comment should be a response to that text. And it's very hit or miss. But when it hits, it's so funny. And when it misses, sometimes it's still funny. It's just not.
Yeah. I see. It's yeah. So do you mind showing some of the code and maybe running C3PO on the on Slack?
Let me pull up the code. Let's see, hold on. Hold on. All right. Well, the only thing I will say, I'm a little hesitant to show off some of the code. Maybe if I'm careful about it. I have not followed the best engineering practices.
It's totally cool. Totally cool.
No, it's less that I'm ashamed of the code and more that I have credentials right in the code that I don't want to show on here. But, but I can show off. I've got one. As long as I'm careful about scrolling.
And by credentials, you mean API keys?
API keys, yeah.
And
some of which are like username, login, because that's part of it.
Yes, definitely. Let me ask you, how many APIs, on the top of your head, how many APIs did you use?
So ones I actually do have in place. And then the last thing I added, actually, that I didn't even mention, is I wanted something like Giphy, but for YouTube. So if you say, show me blank, it will look for blank on YouTube and pull that in.
And I love that feature.
And the combination of all of those wound up really genuinely being a very entertaining thing to interact with.
Yes.
If nothing else, it's actually just really funny to play with. And so, and it's funny because I actually do utilize all of the pieces for things. Like, it helps. It's more a little inside baseball because it helps to know how to phrase the questions to get the right types of responses. But, you know, for example, I might say something to it and then get a Reddit response that then leads to the next thing I want to ask about.
Yeah.
And also, like, sometimes I'll ask it in a way that will trigger the Reddit API, but it's not satisfactory. So I'll rephrase it in a way that will work for the Twitter API.
Yeah.
And that will get me something funny. And then maybe it'll reference something I don't know about. And so I'll ask it in a way that triggers the Wikipedia API, or I'll ask it in a way that triggers the YouTube API, because I genuinely was like, what is that thing? I want to know. Show me it.
But don't you think that's kind of how humans actually converse? Like, I would ask you about a subject, and then you would answer it.
And that's the thing that I think is interesting. I think you can actually have a conversation with C3PO. It's just that there's no way that conversation is fooling anyone. That it's a human being, so much as it's a way of having a conversation that's kind of funny, but it's just sort of like an adventure. It's just entertainment, you know. It's not, it's a very entertaining bot to interact with.
True, very true.
Here, and I guess I've been talking about it so much. Why don't I just pull it up here? Also, I will say this. Fair warning, C3PO is not always polite. Reddit and Twitter are not always polite.
And it's kind of this is, I think, the spontaneity of C3PO, and you know, how it sometimes may respond with some, you know, maybe a little bit profound, because it's grabbing what people actually say, so it's reflecting on other people's responses. And this is part of why I actually loved it, because I kind of felt like this is a genuine human response.
It is, well, and that's the thing. It is a genuine human response. It's just that it's not necessarily responding to exactly which is when it can go off the rails. But it's still funny. So you can already see on the screen, I started talking to it to start, and you know, again, as I said, you know, definitely swears like a sailor when it comes to Reddit. So, you know, how are you today? I'm on fucking fire today. Got up at 4:30 and straight up went to war on the bench press at the gym. I'm not going to read the whole wall of text, but you know, I expect you can.
I'm gonna actually play with it a little bit. So
yeah, go ahead, get in there.
Show me Lady Gaga.
You gotta say "show me." So there you go.
Oh, Lady Gaga wearing a long.
Instead, you got the Reddit response. So there you go. So that just, you know, that just hit YouTube. And, you know, and again, part of it's actually really fun, partly because Slack, because of what Slack has as well. You know, the fact is that if there's a link to a photo or a YouTube video, it'll put it right in there. And that really helps. And it is actually something that I found, it is in a way a form of entertainment, because it's genuinely more fun to do it like when there's another person in the chat room. It's just like, let's play with C3PO right now.
Yeah.
Because different people are asking it things and it's giving different responses. And, you know, sometimes the responses are amiss and you just kind of skip past those. And sometimes they're really great. And everybody laughs really hard. So, I don't know, is Mobot on?
Yeah, I think I need to switch Mobot on. So just a second. So this was C3PO's "How are you today?" And then I guess I'll get Mobot on, and then it's still loading on my side.
Still loading. All right. Well, we can ask C3PO some more things. Yeah. What do you think of?
Researchers founded Let me check that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
By Silicon Valley's Investors by John
I do have a
Markov.
funny thing. The Twitter API, sometimes, I don't know if it's something I did wrong or something Twitter did wrong, but sometimes the links get cut off. How are you? Fair to partly
Yes, sometimes Mobot demonstrates some stupidity.
So yeah, so with Mobot, it's like with Mobot, I mean, in a way, it's similar to C3PO. If you ask it the right types of questions that it has good responses for, then it's solid.
Yeah, but the thing about Mobot is you never get a solid piece of information out of it. It's kind of like you're in this rabbit hole, deep loop of asking question, and then Mobot has a way of just asking another question in response to your question. So
yeah. So we should have, the way we should have started this video is by asking C3PO what artificial intelligence is. Because there's your definition for artificial intelligence, going back to earlier.
Yeah, that's true. We should have started that way.
We should have started with that.
So the thing is here is we've programmed them both, Mobot and C3PO. So when a certain user asks it, it will reply back to that user using the Slack @tag. So if I go Mobot, how are you? And can you show your screen or?
Oh, you're not seeing it? Oh,
you have to speak. So.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's true. I don't know.
So it responds back to me, and when we've thought about this, we decided to have some kind of a chat bot where actually the both bots can ask and respond to each other, and the way we can do that is just by asking Mobot, what do you think about @C3PO, and then this will start.
No. I turned that off.
Oh, okay.
I turned that off. I did not want any more chat bot wars. That's the thing. I can turn it back on, or in fact, I guess I could sign in as C3PO and get that started if we wanted to do it that way. But yeah, the thing is when you get them talking to each other, first of all, it goes very fast because they're they're just immediately responding. So it just starts just filling up the room, but it very quickly turns into nonsense.
Yeah, it turns into a fight at the end, and they kind of keep swearing to each other.
Well, yeah. So mine swears at yours because it pulls things from Reddit, which has swears, and then yours complains that mine's not very polite.
Yes.
And then mine will say something, and yours will regurgitate half of what I just said because that's the way the program responds. By repeating back what I said as like a question back at me, rephrased slightly differently or something like that. So,
think about C3PO.
But yeah, I don't know if you want to try to get something funny out of C3PO, but I don't know what is implement. I don't know. Yeah, it responds with something that seems kind of intelligent.
Yeah.
But also a little off. With that explanation, I didn't give an explanation. What ties it to working for lengths of 4? I said nothing about lengths of 4. So, but one thing that I've found to be kind of funny, you could ask some of the types of things that you see in Code Newbie sometimes, like what is the best JavaScript framework? And it'll give you a response. There you go. Here's It's like, hey, that sounded actually like a really intelligent response.
Yes.
And a lot of that's because some of those types of questions really genuinely get asked on Reddit, and people respond to them. Obviously, if there was a Reddit post that was basically asking exactly that, what is the best JavaScript framework, then yeah, you're going to get really good, accurate responses that very much respond to exactly what you say. I don't know, should I use Angular JS? Let's see.
Django with Angular.
There you go. It's the best choice for a responsive website.
Yeah.
And then if I want to, look for something a little differently, I could phrase it more like, what do you think about Angular JS? Now, a lot of times the Twitter ones will, again, it depends. And actually, I played with it a little bit, and I've changed the code, and sometimes it works well, and sometimes it doesn't. I've tried playing with the modifying the Twitter search to include like I think and then whatever you said, and sometimes that gets much better responses because like this is just a tweet about Angular.
Yes.
Not saying like Angular sucks or something.
Yeah. So for the people,
hey, there's a job listing for you.
Yeah, that's a job listing.
But what was it the other day? It was really funny. It was like someone was asking a genuine question, like
what do you think about Hillary Clinton?
Generics or something like that, and I was like, show me C# generics tutorial. Something like that. And it's like, oh, there you go. Thank you, C3PO. I mean, not that you couldn't have just gone to, into a browser and typed that into Google and gotten the exact same response, but sometimes it's.
One cool thing also is you can ask it about current stuff, like what do you think about Bernie Sanders?
Oh yeah, right, exactly.
Or Hillary Clinton.
Oh, that was a priceless response.
Feel the burn.
You're just going to get a tweet about Bernie Sanders, although anytime you ask it about Trump, it's usually something really funny.
Yeah. Asking Mr. Trump.
The other one we got the other day was really funny because it was like a picture of like comparing Trump to Hitler or something like that.
Yeah,
it can be very amusing, but yeah, there you go. That's C3PO. I also added this late. I didn't make it like really very good at all, but it will also do basic math for you.
Oh, cool.
You have to prefix it with math, but then it uses a Node math eval library that will eval. You can even do complicated stuff, I think, but will that
So Mobot, can you count 0 to 10? Oh. I told you, like, Mobot has this way of diverting the question into another question.
Right, which is why when ours talk to each other, it usually just devolves into yours saying. I had to specifically because of those bot fights. I just had to like add some entries into Rive script that was like, or whatever into the. I added a little bit of code that was like, if C3PO gets text that's really long, it would just respond with boring.
Yeah.
because otherwise it would just be ridiculous. Mine wouldn't know how to handle it. So, I don't know.
So, I'm asking C3PO, how did El Chapo escape?
Well, for the.
So it's like.
Well, there you go. That was kind of.
That's it.
But you could say, like maybe not everybody knows. There you go. Maybe not.
So yeah, I asked it, show me how did El Chapo escape, and it's like inside El Chapo's escape tunnel. This is really awesome.
Yeah.
As you said, it's entertaining, it's informative, and it's the collective. It's the best collective answer of the.
It is. Well, it is. It uses collective intelligence, and I mean, I think if someone were really interested and willing to put the work in, I think you could actually go really far with making one that's better by not just hitting Reddit or Twitter under the right circumstances, but by hitting like every resource that really involves people having conversations. You could probably go really far, because anything that you say to C3PO, someone on the internet has probably said.
Mm-hmm.
And someone has probably responded to it in some way. So if you put the work in, you could, and you could go even further. You could process the text using natural language processing or something like that, that understands maybe more the intention of what someone is saying. That might help you know where to look for the right thing, something like that. So I mean, there's a lot more you could do. And then if you really wanted to go even further, you could probably use the internet as a whole as a data set for training a chatbot to know how to talk. But that's beyond my knowledge. I kind of know you can, but I wouldn't really know how. And B, I just do not have the time for that. So.
True, and I think we've proved our point with chatbots. We kind of know what are the technologies, what are the limitations, and where we can improve further. So, and that was the point of this entire project, is to get the AI members to have fun and implement and know where is chatbots on the map of AI. So I think I like the project. I know I can go further, but I like to try new things all the time.
Yeah.
So now I think we've showcased these bots, and it was awesome. For the past 2 weeks, I think more than 2 weeks, we've had some fun.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking also about a future project or a future mini project. What else can we do? And we want to take it little step by little step, so people who are just coming into the community would also have a chance joining in with small little.
Yeah. We did talk about this previously, and I definitely think. Doing something that's a little more, in my opinion, real AI, but something maybe a little more algorithmic. And I know I've said it a bunch of times, but I think min-max is a good place to go. And there's a site online that does bot competitions for games. I think they have one for Connect 4 going right now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think would be a fun thing we could enter. And they basically, the whole point of the site is that people build bots, they upload them, and then they just fight the bots against each other to see who has the best bot. And I think that's fun. And doing it with Connect 4 is not really that hard. It's meant to be an entry level. They it's definitely not the first one or the only one on that site. They have a whole bunch, but they specifically put Connect 4 out as a beginner, more of a beginner project for it. I mean, not that it's like nothing, but it's certainly less complicated, because some of the other ones they do are genuinely challenging open-ended problems, like, you know, even like poker bots. You know, it's like, yeah, you can make a poker bot that purely follows a system of rules. That's not very hard to do. Or like a, you know, like a blackjack bot, you know, like where like there are percentages for everything, and so you could write a bot that could know how to deal with those percentages. But poker is interesting because, you know, it's a hidden information game. You don't know what your opponents have, so you don't have full information to be able to do it, as opposed to something like Connect 4 or chess, which are complete information games.
That's true. So what do you think? Do you have any proposals?
Well, I guess I thought that was a proposal.
It is. I think it's a good site to work on. I'm not really. I've gone through the site, and I'm going to share it on Slack later for everyone to catch up. But I want to understand. So you're building a bot that competes with other bots in winning a game, right?
Correct.
And you're using an API to communicate with the game engine.
No, actually, it's not exactly like that. It needs to communicate. There's a very specific protocol that it has to communicate over standard in and out. And you actually upload it, and they run it on their servers.
Ah, I see.
Because otherwise you could just have a person do it or something, right? I mean, this way they know. And it's interesting too, because they use something called a time bank. So you have a limited amount of time to take your turn. They don't want to, right? So like there is a certain amount, like there's memory and time considerations to make, which is one of the things that I find interesting about it. For me, I started working on one because I thought it was a good project to teach myself Rust, which is a programming language that I find really interesting, but it's also, you know, intended to be C-level performance, but a higher level language, and deal with memory safety for you and that kind of thing. And it's a cool language. I like it, but I haven't really stuck my teeth into anything for it. And I thought this would be a good project because it would really benefit from the additional performance. So
is there any language restrictions? What kind of languages can I use?
Well, they have a listing on their site. I can look it up, but it's a ton of languages. But if you were to write it in, like, you know, Python or Ruby, you're at a disadvantage in terms of the time constraint aspect. Let me look it up here. Languages page. Okay. So yeah, they have support for C, Clojure, Common Lisp, C++, C#, D, Elixir, Go, Haskell, Java, JavaScript, Pascal, Perl, PHP, Prolog, Python, Python 3, Ruby, Rust, Scala, and TCL.
Do you mind sharing that link, please?
Sure thing. So this is specifically the languages page, but it's for the. What do you want? You want me to just share it through the Hangouts chat?
Yes, please.
Hold on.
Because I'm compiling everything we have here, all the links, everything we've discussed in a show notes file, so everyone can access later.
So there you go.
Yeah, I see it.
And there's a leaderboard, and you can see matches. You can actually see, if you go to the site, you can actually watch a game be played. Because because they have a UI for it that you can see the game getting played, but the way it actually works, you do not write that part of the code.
Yes.
Basically, the way it works is that there's a protocol where basically it will send you like what is the current state of the game, what time have you been allocated, and then it basically prompts for you to respond, and you respond again through protocol, specifically like which column do you drop thing in. So you'll basically listen on standard in, write back to standard out what your move is, but obviously during that time you have to figure out what the move is. So you would the basic approach to this type of game, you have to model the game state yourself, and then analyze that, look at what your possible options are, and if you're going down the min-max road, which is the conventional way of tackling this type of problem, then you would basically go, okay, well, this is the current game state. What are all my possible choices for this state? And then look at those, and then do it again. Building a tree structure, recursively going through to every game state, figuring out what are all the next game states, and go as deep as you can, and then figuring out what the value of those states are as deep as you go. And then obviously you want to try to go down paths that lead to you winning. That's basically the principle of min-max.
Yeah, this
basically sounds... you are trying to maximize while your opponent, because you'll basically you'll calculate all the options for you going and the opponent going, and then you going and the opponent going. You'll figure out every possible. That's why it's brute force to do it. And you're basically assuming that your opponent will make the best choice, and then you will make the best choice based on their choices and so forth.
So basically, a player is maximizing and another is minimizing, and this goes down deep the tree.
Right. Yeah. And in my opinion, part of the trickiest part is getting a good evaluation function in the cases where you don't have a complete state. It's easy to say this is a win, this is a loss. So obviously I want to go towards a win, and I don't want to go towards a loss. What's hard is that this is actually genuinely intensive for a computer to do. Even a modern computer, is very quickly, because of the exponential growth of all these states, there's only so deep you can go. You can't actually, even on a really good computer, it'd be very difficult to enumerate every possible state.
That's true. I did implement a similar, the min-max, I think a month ago, for another challenge here at the Code Newbie.
The zombie one, right?
Yeah, the zombie. And the way I tackled the tree propagation issue, the state space issue, is by iteratively deepening the tree. So I go 4 levels deep, and then I stop, and then I do my calculations, figure out the min-max and the best moves for each player. And then once I do that for a specific portion of the tree, then I do it again, starting from a leaf node that ended up with the better solution. So I never propagate the entire tree. I just propagate portions of.
And you wouldn't want to do that. And there's other advanced techniques to alpha beta pruning. Things like that. And I expect, and again, I'm, sort of learning some of this stuff, but there's also a certain amount where, if you think about Connect 4, 4 turns in, there's a bunch of ways of arriving at the same game state. So those are whole paths you don't have to follow in each possible way of getting there, because it's the same. Once you've reached the same state, you only need to calculate from that point on. That kind of thing. So there's a lot, and again, what that comes down to is those are all optimizations that you're making, and the reason you're making them is because a modern computer still can't actually brute force the whole thing. If you could brute force the whole thing quickly, there'd be no reason to optimize. You'd just be like, whatever.
Yes. Yes.
And like tic-tac-toe, for example, you can brute force the whole.
Yeah, the whole that's not an issue, but with bigger games like chess and maybe Connect
Right, chess becomes infeasibly hard. There's something called branching factor.
Yeah, the branching factor is on average for each I think after 7 moves or maybe less even, there is an average branching factor of 14, and then I think after maybe 10 steps deep, you have a state space, a possible state space of more than the number of stars in the universe.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and the reason why it gets there so fast is because it's exponential based on the branching factor.
Yeah.
You know, so some number to the 14th is, you know, if x to the 14th is how many possible game states based on x turns, basically.
Yeah. Which is something. It's a challenging thing to optimize.
Yeah, and that's why games like Go are notoriously hard for a computer, because their branching factor is so high that you can barely get a couple turns in before it's infeasible. It's just like useless knowledge to have even explored that tree.
Okay, so this sounds like a cool proposition. The Connect 4.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun, and I think you know, good to learn things.
Yeah. So you stick to Rust, I'll stick to Python.
Sounds good.
And yeah, let's do something here. I need to go through the documentation, understand what is this protocol that I have to speak.
It's very simple. It's a simple protocol, and they lay it out very well. It's very easy to understand. But basically, you just listen for standard in things, and when you get a standard in thing, then you respond based on that. And some of them will just update you, like you know, some things are set up configuration that would only be called up front. Like technically, and I don't think you'd even need to worry. You could probably ignore this one, but technically, it's configurable of like how many rows and columns it is, I think.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, there is a standard Connect 4 board, which is like 7 columns and 6 rows. But hypothetically, it'll tell you up front. So I don't know why. Maybe because they want you to be able to write an algorithm that could handle n-sized Connect 4 board. But
yeah,
I'm not even really going to worry about that, because there's some optimizations you can make. If you know the exact size of the board. So I might do that.
So you mean if I know the size of the board, then I can actually optimize the game to specifically perform better?
Well, I mean, in terms of things like memory allocation. So again, if you're doing Python, it doesn't matter. But if you're doing Rust or C or whatever, and again, there's memory and CPU constraints to this. If you know exactly how big a row is, you know, then you can say, you know, well, because part of it is, remember what we've talked about, these game states become exponentially big. And, you know, and depending, I mean, it depends on how you're storing things and copying things and whatever. But, you know, if you can make your game state take up less room, or, you know, be optimized in certain ways. Like there's just certain optimizations you can make in terms of memory and things. I actually started exploring down a road of using something, what's it called? SIMD, same instruction, multiple dispatch, which is a way of performing simultaneous calculations on the right size numbers, because computers have 128-bit registers, which means that that's bigger than, you know, typical size ints or floats or whatever. And so it can actually perform multiple operations on multiple numbers at the same time, literally the same time in one, you know, in one CPU instruction, you're able to do 4 calculations instead of 1 calculation. And again, this is an optimization game. Being able to do that matters.
But then, wouldn't you face any like lock issues? The same thing you would face with threads?
No, because it's not actually shared mutable state or anything like that. It's literally just that it's like you have a SIMD object, which is basically like 4 integers, let's say, and then you multiply it times another SIMD object, and then you get, it's sort of like vector multiplication or something like that. Like you're basically just able to produce a result that's just 4 times faster than it was.
That's really cool. And where is this? This is in Rust?
Well, actually, that's the thing that I ran into. Rust is still so new that the SIMD libraries are unstable, and so you actually can't use them because the challenge uses like Rust 1.3 stable, so it actually doesn't allow SIMD. If I were doing C or C++, then I probably could use SIMD.
It's short for a single instruction.
Multiple dispatch, yeah.
Instruction,
but
it's basically what you're talking about is a technique rather, right?
That's what?
It's a computation technique rather than something that is tied to a specific language.
Correct. It's actually tied to the CPU.
Uh-huh.
It's something the CPU provides capability for.
So I'm looking for this right now. So I typed in single instruction multiple dispatch, and I end up with a wiki with multiple dispatch. Multi-methods is a feature of some programming languages in which a function or a method can be dynamically dispatched based on the runtime dynamic type, or in the more general case.
Oh, multiple data, not multiple dispatch. I'm sorry. Single instruction, multiple data.
Okay.
SIMD.
SIMD. Oh.
SIMD. Yeah.
Single and multiple data is a class of parallel computers in Flint's taxonomy. It describes computer with multiple processing elements that perform the same.
Yeah, sorry. Multiple dispatch is a totally different thing.
yeah. I was like,
yeah. It's basically like matrix multiplication.
Yeah, vectors and
vector multiplication. Yeah.
This is totally cool. This is my first time to hear about this.
Yeah, it's something I just wanted to play with, but again, ultimately, I'm not even going to wind up using it. And honestly, I took a first pass at this, and I ran into a corner. I was over optimizing, I think, a little early. I think I'm going to try to just write it so that it works, and then maybe I'll step it back and try to make it more optimal. But there are things like, like I said, for example, if you're allocating an array in a language like C or C+ or Rust or whatever, and it's like real genuine array, and it's just trying to allocate the memory. You actually need to know how big that array is when you're allocating.
Yes.
So at compile time. So receiving how big it is, late, you could hypothetically, I suppose.
Even I think languages like Python can allow for such things if you include the right library, so you can.
Yeah, that's probably true, but at some point, I don't know. At some point.
Yeah, it's
write it and see if you're going to do that.
That's exactly because when you start doing stuff like that in a dynamic language, then you feel like, maybe I should do that and see, because I'm actually going out of the realm of dynamics.
Partly because I think there's a certain amount of overhead to going through that barrier.
But Python really handles this well because under Python's hood is actually C.
Yeah, if you're using C Python, you can use C types, I think, pretty well.
And
I don't know. I mean, obviously there is a certain amount of interaction. But I mean, typically, depending on how you do it, if you can't like statically link against a C library, then there's always going to be a certain amount of overhead anytime you're trying to communicate over the barriers. Some are better at it than others. I know Lua is really good, I guess, for that type of thing. It tries to keep it really minimal. But it's also really an unconventional way of using it. So anyway, I got to wrap up. I got stuff I got to do, and we've talked for a very long time.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone would possibly watch an hour and a half of us just chatting about this, but
no, that's really cool. I think people will appreciate this and appreciate the knowledge that you and I have shared here, and hopefully next time we'll have a greater turnout. And yeah, I'm going to look into this challenge thing on the Connect 4 site, and we'll talk. We'll chat about it on Slack.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Russell.
All right. Bye.
Bye.